Let's begin today's Vanguard news with just 3 new support for Astroea in DZBT07. Since it's still the day after Christmas and people would rather do other things than listen to me ramble about some cardboard. Twilight Major Lilia when placed on Vanguard makes you put a trigger unit in your drop zone into your soul if you have a Almajester Vanguard, and once per turn. While on the back row rear guard, you can pay 1 soul blast when your unit in the same column as her stands by your card's ability, while you have her Almajester Vanguard to stand herself. It's been a while since I last saw Almajester cards, that I'll just assume this isn't what the deck needed, and that the deck already has Bifron's. Architry Chimera when placed on rear guard lets you put a card from hand into your soul if you have a grade 3 or higher Astroea Vanguard to draw a card, and it gets 5k power. And while on rear guard or the Guardian Circle, it gets 10k shields if there's 1 or more Astroea card or critical trigger in your bind zone. Then it gets the intercept ability if you have 3 or more in your bind zone. The fact that this card lets you soul charge a card in hand gives me turn 3 cross ride PTSD, but then I remembered that masks units can only be ridden from their respective base forms. Finally, in case you're wondering about a new form needing the original Astroea, Dual Magistar Astroea Bacostella, while on Vanguard at the start of your main phase lets you discard a card in hand if you did not ride this turn, to ride a card with the same name as herself from your bind zone. Then activate Persona Ride if you rode with this ability. And while on Vanguard, you can pay 1 counter and 3 soul blast when she attacks a Vanguard to bind all of the Astroea cards or critical triggers that were soul blasted for this card's cost. Then depending on how many Astroea or critical triggers in your bind zone, you retire one of your opponent's rear guards and all of your front row units get 5k power. If your bind zone has 1 or more, then this unit gets an extra critical and drive check if your bind zone has 3 or more, and stand one of your rear guards if your bind zone has 5 or more. Talk about a major facelift considering she's not wearing the masks anymore. Take note that this unit still counts as an Almajester card, and that she can work without the original Astroea. Using her masks form however could be an optional tech if you wanted. The fact you can turn any card in hand as a Persona Ride, as long as you have another copy of her in your bind zone already made this card really good. Then it now counts Astroea cards along with critical triggers to speed up her ability. I would have considered this a new top contender meta deck, if not for a certain ninja deck that screwed over Sacrifice Glass and Grand Dogma for an entire year. I'm of course talking about Shoujo Doji and its ability to manipulate the opponent's bind zone, while also still being at full power here in the English game. And that concludes this Vanguard news without the bullshit. Special thanks to my Patreon members for continuing to support my content creation. Be sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments how you lonely build this deck if Shoujo Doji finally gets a card restriction in English.